What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to From the Bench. I'm your host, Will Meadows, and welcome to our Friday edition of the show, where we have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about Vol football and what players stood out from the Tennessee football team at the NFL Combine. Obviously, Dante Thornton making headlines, running a 4.3 flat, which we'll get into that later. And then the Vols take a rough L 2 nights ago in Oxford, Mississippi to the Ole Miss Rebels. But we've got senior night, which is going to be a very emotional senior night, and a hard-hitting senior night coming up tomorrow at 2 p.m. against the South Carolina Gamecocks. But before we get into anything, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment about where you want some of these Vols from last year to go in the NFL. If you've got a favorite NFL team, obviously mine's the Bills, as most of you guys probably already know. So let's just get right into it. And make sure you guys are followed to all the social medias. They are listed below. So, like I said, we're going to start with the Combine. We've got a lot of guys who showcase their really God-given talent, their athleticism, put it on display at the Combine. Like I said, Dante Thornton was one of many who kind of surprised at the Combine. We knew he was fast, but we didn't know he was 4.3 fast, which is ridiculous. And Dante Thornton pre-Combine was probably a 4th, 5th, 6th round selection. We knew he was fast, like I said. Struggled to get open a little bit. Was a good deep ball threat, a good deep ball receiver, but kind of struggled to run routes a little bit, create separation. But you come out there at the Combine and you're 6'5" and on a 4.3 flat, and those long strides, that sounds like second to third round to me. Late second, early third. A team that's maybe a contender and willing to take a risk on a guy that, like I said, maybe didn't put up the production of a second-round pick, but has all the intangibles, 6'5", 4.3 flat. That's really all I got to say. When you hear that just screams NFL athlete. So good for Dante Thornton. I could see him going to a team like the Chargers. The Chargers could land a guy like Devontae Adams here in free agency, DK Metcalf maybe, but they obviously, the Quentin Johnston experiment kind of failed over there in L.A. I mean, he improved last year, but still struggles with hands. Dante Thornton's hands improved tremendously from his first to his second year in the Vol uniform. So I don't know, could be an interesting thing to see there. Maybe a place like the Dallas Cowboys, even though I do not like the Cowboys, but they're full of smaller guys like Brandon Cooks, and CeeDee Lamb's not smaller, but he's not really a big body, and Gavontae Turpin and guys like that. Maybe a big body guy like Dante Thornton, getting him in that receiver room. I really could see him fitting well there. James Pearce, he's had a lot of talk surrounding him in this draft process. He goes out there, and we knew he was fast. Like I said, ran a 4.47, which leads all defensive linemen. Dante Thornton was second out of all receivers, but James Pearce leads all D linemen in the 40-yard dash. We knew he was explosive, 6'5". His get off the line is incredibly impressive. But as I was saying, he has a lot of talk surrounding him right now, and it's not necessarily for the best reason. As we know, James Pearce pre-college football season was number one, and the number one pick in most mock drafts. And maybe, don't get me wrong, an incredible season, All-American type season. Maybe didn't have the stats that he did his year prior, his sophomore year, but pressures are a very important stat. James Pearce took a lot of weight off of the rest of the D-line. It let guys like Joshua Joseph really flourish this year, but his ability to get to the quarterback, his number of pressures speak for themselves. He was up there with number one in pressures. He may have been number one in pressures in college football this year, but like I said, it's not necessarily the best talk surrounding, because there's some looming and rumors of character issues from James Pearce, and me just kind of knowing some people around the team as it is, I've heard a little bit about that just when he was here at the University of Tennessee. Not like he's not a bad guy, don't get me wrong. I also have a little bit of a comparison I'd like to make in a second, but not a bad guy, but maybe not the best teammate for everybody. I don't think it's much of a problem. Like, some guys are just not big locker room guys, and that's fine. But obviously, these NFL scouts are seeing something that they don't like. But my comparison kind of for this, and don't get me wrong, he didn't get arrested like Jalen Carter, and I'm not saying he's as good as Jalen Carter either, but Jalen Carter, former Georgia Bulldog. Pre-CFB season, he was the number one pick. Just an absolute monster. Kind of falls down draft boards for some character concerns, and then he gets the DUI, which James Pearce has not been arrested by any means, but it's a character issue nonetheless, maybe not to that extent, but some character issues. You hear that Jalen Carter might fall maybe towards the end of the first round. Who could get a guy like Jalen Carter, who is a top 5 talent, and then he ends up going to 9 to the Philadelphia Eagles, and we've seen what he's done there. He is an absolute game wrecker. He was a key piece to that Eagles Super Bowl team, where that D-line really dominated in the Super Bowl. So I think that's what it's going to be. I think that you can't deny the type of player that James Pearce is, the athleticism that he presents, just the pure get off. He has improved incredibly as a run defender in his sophomore year to his junior year. So I definitely, in my opinion, he is the first or second best edge rusher in the draft. Mike Green out of Marshall's incredible. Another guy, Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, didn't have the most production over there at A&M, but was a freak athlete over there at the Combine. But he's definitely my edge rusher 1 or 2. Well, Abdul Carter is 1, don't get me wrong. Sorry, I didn't think about that. Abdul Carter is 1, and then James Pearce is 2nd or 3rd. I think him and Mike Green are pretty interchangeable. But the reason I kind of compare him to James Pearce, like some Mel Kiper's latest mock draft, he didn't even have him in the first round. That if he falls out of the first round, then somebody's going to get an absolute steal in the second. But I do not think that's going to happen whatsoever. I don't see him falling out of the top 15, in my opinion. I think Abdul Carter will go number 1. I think that Mike Green could go as early as 7 or 8 to the Carolina Panthers, and maybe James Pearce could as well. I think James Pearce, some landing spots to kind of look for him is, like I said, the Carolina Panthers. Then there at 11, the Arizona Cardinals are picking, and they kind of need a dynamic piece off the edge. But where I really see him not being able to fall out of is 15, where the Cincinnati Bengals are selecting. They like those athletic edges, and they just had Sam Hubbard retire. They just like yesterday afternoon, told Trey Hendrickson, their leading sack leader and one of the NFL sack leaders for the last 3 to 5 years, that he could seek permission, or he has permission to seek a trade. So they're definitely, they're trying to pay Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins over there. And I just don't see any way that they can keep Trey Hendrickson for that. And getting a guy like James Pearce, who's, like I said, incredibly explosive off the edge on a rookie contract, I don't see any way that he falls below 15. Dylan Sampson had a pretty good combine, nothing bad, nothing really jumped off the board. We know the athlete Dylan Sampson is. He didn't run a slow time. It was in the 4.44s, I think it was. 4.48, but Dylan Sampson's got football speed. No scouts are curious to if Dylan Sampson is fast enough. We saw his home run ability all year for the Tennessee Volunteers, and he's another guy like Amarion Hampton. He did have an incredible draft combine and has just kind of shot up boards, not necessarily because of the combine, but his drills were pretty solid, and he's also just the more he's getting into interviews with NFL teams, it seems like his draft stock is just rising each and every day. So obviously Ashton Jeanty's going to go running back 1, and then Amarion Hampton, some mock drafts have him going early as 12, 19, 22, somewhere around there. But especially if Amarion Hampton goes round 1, I could definitely see a guy like Dylan Sampson going round 2. He is my running back 3 or 4. Him and Cam Scatabo are kind of interchangeable, and Caleb Johnson out of Iowa is right there with him. So he's a guy that, per the right fit, he's definitely, like, him and Cam Scatabo are 2 completely different backs. Like, Dylan Sampson's more of a speed guy. Cam Scatabo's just kind of do it all for you. If a team's looking for a receiving threat, I'm definitely taking Dylan Sampson over that. So we'll see. It's interesting to see with him. I think he can go as early as round 2, and I don't see him falling out of round 3 in my opinion. And then one of my favorite players who I've talked about many times on this show, Omar Norman Lott. So many teams are high on him right now. may not be the biggest guy at the position over there in the defensive tackles, but he is just, his get off is impressive, just like we talked about with James Pearce. And he's got a very low center of gravity, very strong. Maybe not, like I said, may not be the biggest guy of that position, but his low center of gravity and his force, really, his point of attack and his hand placement really helps him get off the line. And he's one of the best pass rushers at that defensive tackle position in the draft. He's another guy I think could go as early as round 2. Some mock drafts have him going one of the first picks of round 2, especially because of how well and just smooth he was in his drills at the combine. No wasted movements by him. So it'll be interesting to see. This is definitely we've never, in recent memory, like we have not had 4 guys that could be drafted in the top 2 rounds. So Josh Heupel and company are definitely putting out NFL athletes, and it looks good for recruiting, and just hope that those guys find a home. And I love cheering for the guys. Obviously, I'm a Bills fan, but I cheer for Kamara and Josh Palmer and Derek Barnett, everybody who's come through Tennessee. It's fun to cheer for them in the NFL too. So we'll see. I'll keep updating you guys. I mean, there's other guys like Elijah Simmons who were invited to the combine, other guys that could get drafted, Brew McCoy. So we'll as it gets closer and closer to the NFL draft, which I guess it's in, a month and a half or so, we'll talk more and more about where I think those guys could land and their more ideal landing spots. But that's all we'll talk about right now for those prospects. Just focus in on those 4 and their impressive combines. Obviously, the thing not everybody wants to talk about, and we're not going to talk too much about it, the Vols lose a rough one 2 nights ago in Oxford to the Ole Miss Rebels. Travis Brakefield was unguardable in the second half, had 19 points for the Ole Miss Rebels and hit the game winner. It was just, I told you guys on Wednesday's show, like, Ole Miss is a team, when you're coming off of a big win like Alabama, that's kind of the last team you want to see. They're unranked, but they're definitely a top 25 team in the country, in my opinion. Just a good basketball team. They're deep. Chris Beard is easily one of the best coaches in college basketball, especially on the offensive end. He exploited mismatches all night against us with Okpara, and as kind of weird as it is to say, Meshack there for a while. We just couldn't figure out who to put on Brakefield there in the second half. But we struggled shooting in the second half. Igor knocks down a clutch and 1-3 as we're down 4, ties the game up. They miss a shot, get their own rebound, and put it back up to go up 2. And then we run it down the floor, call a timeout with 3 seconds left, and Igor misses. Some people are saying a wide-open layup for the game. That was not a wide-open layup. Anybody who plays basketball knows that was a hard layup. Contorting your body like that it's never easy in the air with a defender falling off of you. So not mad at the shot. It was a good shot, in my opinion, for the last one. Igor getting downhill. It's hard to hate that. Just unfortunate the way it ended, but, it kind of just stinks because as soon as you think this basketball program is peaking at the right time and, we're heading into March, we are in March, the SEC tournament's next weekend, and, we've got March Madness right around the corner, and you think, oh, the Vols are getting hot at the right time, and we just drop one right there. So the 1 seed looks all but out of reach unless the Vols win the SEC tournament. Florida's right back in that talk. Right now it's looking like Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida. But I mean, Florida has who do they play this weekend? Kentucky maybe? That could be wrong. I'm so sorry if that's wrong. And then Alabama and Auburn, Iron Bowl for basketball. That's always going to be a good game. It's at Auburn, so who knows? The SEC tournament, in my opinion, is going to be just as fun to watch as March Madness because there's so many good teams in the SEC, and there's, nearly 10 teams that are going to make it to March. So it'll be interesting to see. It just kind of stinks that, like I said, as soon as everybody's getting high on this basketball program, they just shoot you right in the foot. Right when you get high on them. And, most Tennessee basketball fans are afraid to get high on us because we've seen the struggles offensively in the postseason and not being able to get past I guess we got to the Elite Eight, but historically not being able to get past the Sweet 16. Like, it's hard to get high on the Vols in March, and right when you start to get people's attention, we just lose to an unranked one, which that's life. Like I say, the SEC is a gauntlet. So it'll be interesting to see how the boys do in the SEC tournament. Again, if they win it, they'll for sure be a 1 seed. But if not, it's looking like a 2 seed, and they should be a 2 seed as long as they don't lose to somebody that they shouldn't, which is very possible in the SEC tournament. They could be, if they lose somebody that they should not, they could definitely be a 3 seed, in my opinion. With St. John's, is definitely going to win the Big East, in my opinion. Iowa State is still looking good. They don't even have to win the Big 12 because Houston's been so good, and Alabama is still Alabama. So we'll see. Alabama's got a very good resume, so we'll see. The SEC tournament's going to be incredible. But this Saturday, tomorrow, at 2 p.m., we've got senior night, which is so sad. When you really look down the list and see how many people are seniors this year, Zakai Ziegler and Jemai Mashak are really going to be the ones that hit the hardest. They've been 4-year players under Rick Barnes, and it really just kind of stinks that this is their last year. Obviously, Eeyores a senior, D-Stone Dubar's a senior. Let's see, I feel like there's Chaz is a senior, Gainey's a senior, so we're definitely going to lose a lot of production next year when you go down the list and really see that. I mean, that's your best player, your best defender, which is also your 2 best defenders, your best scoring big man. Dubar's been solid on the road in some games, shooting the ball. Gainey is arguably, he's the top 3 scorer on the team, and Chaz Lanier is a finalist for the Jerry West Award. So you're definitely losing a lot of production, but that's not what we're worried about right now. We're worried about honoring these seniors. So it's going to be a tough night, just kind of emotionally for those guys. I was just watching a game Ron Slay was calling. It was UAB and FAU, and it was UAB senior night. And just got to get those senior night jitters out. Don't want to overdo it. And UAB started off their game. Ron Slay was talking about their senior night jitters, and UAB came out and airballed their first 3 shots of the game. So don't want to overdo it. You got South Carolina, who is definitely a winnable game, more than a winnable game, a game that you should not lose. They're the second worst team in the SEC, but they've kind of turned a corner in just a little bit. What corner can you not turn when you haven't won a conference game all year? But they beat Arkansas. They beat down, I guess it was Texas or Mississippi State not too long ago. So I don't know. Should be a game you win. Colin Murray Boyles is definitely a first-round draft pick this year. Really, if you stop him, you can definitely stop South Carolina. So should be a game you win. You definitely want to win it on senior night. In my opinion, if Zakai is not granted another year of eligibility, obviously we know one of his seasons ended to injury, and it ended early. If he's not granted another year of eligibility, I think this is Rick Barnes' last year too. So this could be senior night for Rick Barnes. His last game at Thompson Bowling, which is kind of sad. I hope that's not correct because he's turned this college basketball program around tremendously. But I definitely think it is, especially if Zakai doesn't get that extra year. So there's a lot going on this weekend. Like I said, it's going to be more of an emotional battle than it is a physical battle against a team like South Carolina, but I don't want to say that and then we end up losing. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Again, make sure you guys are followed to all the socials and leave a comment like I said. One, which senior are you going to miss the most? Me, personally, it's going to be Zakai just because of how solid he's been, but Jemai Mashak has been one of my favorite players since he got here. Just love defensive-minded players who don't care to not have the most points, but they love doing the dirty work. So I'm going to miss Jemai for sure. And then where you want to see those guys go in the NFL draft coming up. So that's all for today. Thank you guys for watching, and go Vols.